You're listening to Can You Dig It?
And we're your hosts, Amy Rose
and Alexander Lakshmi Iyer.
We're bringing you gardening heroes, tips, and stories.
Why? So you can find your inner peace.
Today we're excited to chat with Lindsay, co-director for Keep Growing Detroit. Keep Growing Detroit's mission is to promote a food sovereign city where the majority of fruits and vegetables consumed by Detroiters are grown by residents within the city's limits. By supporting a network of over 1,900 urban gardens and farms in the city, Keep Growing Detroit helps residents grow what they eat. Keep Growing Detroit also helps provide the city's gardeners with low barrier opportunities to locally sell the fruits and vegetables that they grow.
My role, and I've been around since 2005, is really supporting garden development. So I provide a lot of the support just as people are getting started and have that idea in their head that they want to start a garden. So coordinating them joining the Garden Resource Program, which provides seeds and then providing a lot of technical assistance, which is everything from how to get neighbors involved to taking a soil test to thinking about what size and scale you should start at. I'm often the one who takes you from your long-term vision down to a more achievable first step. Sometimes I'm the bad guy, crushing dreams, but hopefully that helps people get there in the long term. So I do a lot of the out in the community work to support folks get started, but I also do a lot of the back of the house work with enrolling folks in the Garden Resource Program, which we use Salesforce as our tool for managing all of our data, the applications coming in. So I get some time out in the field and sometime back. I love what I do. I feel very privileged to do this work in Detroit, and it's an amazing community of people that I work with. So.
We also have a special guest today from Salesforce.
Sure, thanks, Alexandra. My name is Eric Schultz. I work at Salesforce in our customer success program. And the reason I'm here is because 3-4 years ago, I think I bumped into, we have a big farmers market called Eastern Market. And one of the places that I'd like to buy my produce from was called Keep Growing Detroit. And one day I bumped in there, and I think my wife was talking about Salesforce, and someone there said, "Oh my God, we need help with Salesforce." And I said, "Oh, I'd love to help." And so then we've had a very good multi-year relationship trying to make Salesforce work a little bit more better and more efficient for what you need it to do.
We love Eric.
I love that you bumped each other at a farmer's market. Isn't that such a great place to meet other people that have, interests in food and health and gardens and everything?
I think our farmers market is the largest in the nation, or it's very, very close.
Yet another reason to come out and visit Detroit. That's great.
Impressive.
What I was going to say is, I think the unique ways in which gardeners are networked, through their garden first, and then through this passion for changing the food system, and then through the desire to bring their skills to feed into that. And it takes so many different skills to do what we're doing. We're so fortunate in that way, because it's a real strong networked community. And that's what I think makes Detroit, there's gardens all over the world, but in Detroit, it's the fact that we're networked is what makes the impact so powerful. So that, that happens a lot in Detroit. I only know people who garden, but there's 25,000 of them,
Wow, having a network like that must be pretty special.
I didn't know the difference between a hot crop and a cold crop when I started, but I've learned so much along the way from all these Detroit gardeners. So it's pretty wonderful.
That's so inspiring, Lindsay. So I think everyone here knows what Keep Growing Detroit's mission is, but could you share for our listeners, what is the mission of Keep Growing Detroit, and how are you working to bring all of these amazing people together?
Our mission is creating a food sovereign city, which again defined as, at least 50% of the fruits and vegetables that Detroit would be grown by Detroiters. But what Keep Growing Detroit is really creating programs that respond to what residents need to do that. And a key part of that is gardens and farms. So, gardens and farms are an amazing tool to connect folks to where food comes from, to have, direct connection of where food comes from, and the support to, be more, self-reliant and resilient by having that connection. And yes, in some cases it's a small backyard family garden where, they're growing a small amount of food, but through that, your values change around knowing where your food comes from and valuing the food system in a different way and having choices and having, kind of that power over, of how you and your family eat. And so, so we try and support residents that want to have that experience and connect in that way to be successful. And so the Garden Resource Program is, this year a network of 1,900 gardens and farms, backyard family gardens, community gardens, school gardens, market gardens. And each one of these is run by their, an individual family or a community group. Own these farms. These are not our farms. We provide simply the resources to support them at the scale that they need. And so, that's sort of the entry, which we connect with a lot of, gardens and farms in the city. And then from there, there's just like so much, we have educational programs to make sure people are successful. I think it's that like, we really listen to what residents say about what they do. Food sovereignty is a huge concept that we're talking about here, but we try to, our sort of, I think why we're successful in, going towards this really ambitious goal of food sovereignty is that it's very tangible ways for people to plug in, to feel, they have, power and self-sufficiency in that road of how to get there. And then we're like continuously improving as an organization, hearing from gardeners and farmers who are involved about where they want to go and how to get there. And we rely on them as, shared owners of how we're going to get there. It's not just us telling the community what to do. It's us as a community really doing this work together.
And that idea of food sovereignty it's such a big concept and such an important one. And I'm curious, this is kind of a two-part question. One, do you work to identify where those food deserts are within the Detroit area? And then two, is part of Keep Growing Detroit's mission to find folks and bring them in and help support them? Or do you do more of an organic, we're here to, yeah, we're here to help when people find us?
Mm-hmm. Those are big questions.
Yes, sorry.
So the first one, I think, like the food desert, concept is just sort of a loaded one. So in terms of like, what desert and why does it exist? Why does it exist? So I don't know how to like directly. Let's start with the second question and say that, in terms of program, like when you look back at, if it started in 2003 as sort of really a grassroots connection between gardeners and farmers, now it's 1900, and the way that the program has grown is very organically through, essentially its roots of where it came from of neighbors working together, community organizations working together to say, I have this great idea, and how do I do that successfully? And sort of that shared need of things that, like, there's some basics that you need to garden, and that's sort of where the Garden Resource Program stemmed from. But then there's also the opportunity to learn from one another, which I think is really powerful. And so I always say that the Garden Resource Program travels backyard fences of people, the people seeing what their neighbors are doing and encouraging them. I really geek out on, when we made our map of where gardens and farms were. I'm like, oh, these two gardens are right down the street from one another. And, so I think it travels organically, but then we also, work to make sure that we're reaching folks that are not necessarily adopters, if you will, or really well, easily connected to, to finding resources. So we try to get ourselves out there and make sure that people know about the resources and the support, as well as just respond when folks come our way.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, like Eric found you at the farmers market. I mean, that's being out there in a very visible way and directly connecting to the community.
Yeah, and I mean, over the years, people have really said, like, like, I knew when you were out there, like on my block, working with 20 people and shovels were in the ground, that you were serious. And that was an organization I wanted, to connect with. And I think, like, we show up, we do the work, we respond to what people, say they need, and we're accountable to that. And I think that that matters. And I think that's sort of the model that we try and follow, is really listening to community, working towards what we say we want to do together, continuously, again, improving on, like, where do we go next? And that's we don't know all the answers, but we really listen deeply to, the gardeners and farmers that we work with, every year, to just say, okay, this is what happened this year. How do we do next year? And, like, that's how the program has grown, and where our organization has, come from.
Awesome. I hate to bring it back to the first question that Amy asked.
Oh yeah, no, that's okay.
But I just wanted to ask you, when you're thinking about food sovereignty, would you consider that the opposite of food insecurity?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think food insecurity is, it happens when people don't have the ability to know where their next meal is coming from. Food insecurity comes from conditions, including structural racism, which, impacts the reason why people do or don't have choices around what food they eat and how they get food. And food sovereignty is all about the ability to make those choices, the ability to be able to make those choices for your family, to be able to know where your food comes from, the ability to say who you want to purchase your food from in terms of how you want economic dollars to circulate in your community, what messages in terms of marketing you want your children to be exposed to. I mean, it's so, there's such a power in the concept of food sovereignty, where people are able to make different choices. And I think when you think about food, a lot of that is based on being empowered to make their own choices, and it's not just about the access to food. And I think that's, like, the issue in with the food desert concept is, like, it's not food not being available, it's, like, about the ways that people are able to, like, determine what is available in their neighborhood, and who owns those businesses, and why do people have land, access to land, and all of those things. When you look, flipping all that on its head, it changes the dynamic when you think about people having more control over the food system, starting with backyard gardens, and then local gardens and farms, where you can hold your local businesses accountable to how they serve the community. And so yes, I think it's again, it's like it's about food, but it's about all these other social issues that create the conditions of why food insecurity exists, that we need to deconstruct. And some of the ways that we deconstruct that is by starting to support people to have different tools to think about how could it look different, and how do you take those steps. And I think the Detroit community is an excellent example.
One of the things that you just mentioned really struck a chord with me, and about how less food insecurity can also lead to improved social justice outcomes. And and there's so much packed into that on many different levels. And what I'm curious about is, like, obviously, like, a lot of that is very hands-on work that your volunteers and the people with Keep Growing Detroit are doing. I'm wondering, like, how has Salesforce, why are you using Salesforce to help with that? Like, and
Sure.
what are you doing with Salesforce? How can we help you, like, do more of
Sure,
all
yeah.
of that amazing work?
Data, collection is super important to be accountable to our goals. And so at Keep Growing Detroit, we have a really extensive system. We call it our dashboard system of setting goals and then tracking those measures on a monthly basis to see how we're doing. And so, and then at the end of the year, all the data that we've collected, turning into our annual report, and again, accountability for all the things that we're achieving. The other way that we use data is in terms of the communication. So as you can imagine, communication with 1,900 gardens and farms, plus all the additional people that are involved with those gardens and farms is challenging. And so just to take you back for a second to 15 years ago when I started with this work, when there were 70 gardeners, I just got on the phone and called them about every education class and called every distribution. It was, and the relationship we have with that kind of communication are incredible for building connections with people, understanding where people are coming from. As the program grew, to 800 gardens, to 1,200 gardens, to now 1,900 gardens, the way in which we're able to communicate with folks is very important. And so with Salesforce, some of the ways that basically we're adapting, we're using technology with Salesforce to adapt to how to do our work and just really be efficient at collecting all the data and managing communications with gardens and farmers. It's like helping us, be able to sustain to sustain the work. And so a little bit, like, I feel like I'm all over the map, but basically, like, to explain a little bit about how our Salesforce system works, we have a form that we use to be able to accept online applications. So back just before we met Eric, I want to say in 2016, we realized we needed to be able to, we're manually entering all of our applications for the Garden Resource Program, which again is however many gardens there are that year. So the ability to have an online application required us to, we were using Access at the time. And so, so implementing Salesforce or switching over to Salesforce was first kind of driven by the need for an online application. So, so basically now we have an application which goes into Salesforce, and that's sort of our database. And then we use that data, going on. So obviously the application connects us to all the key indicators that we have, how many gardens, how to communicate with people, where the gardens are located, how many people are involved. So all of our metrics that are that we're collecting on a regular basis. And then we have been using Salesforce now to track our program activities. So people coming to classes, people that receive raised beds, things like that, to be able to manage our program data on an ongoing basis. I'm going to pause for a second because I'm giving so much information. Do you have questions about that before I go forward?
Well, I think it was a lot, which is great, but I think there were some core themes there, and maybe Eric can help us expand on, like, what have you been doing to help Keep Growing Detroit?
Sure. Yeah. Well, yeah. As Lindsay mentioned, I mean, if I remember correctly, when I met Keep Growing Detroit, not only did you have this bold mission, but you also came and said, we're working with 10 years worth of data. So this is a really great opportunity and really exciting. I think Lindsay mentioned, they have the intake process, as well as I think we set up so that they can pay online right there or later, which makes it a little bit easier for folks. But then this application, we're using, you can imagine that, you know, if you're doing something that's kind of bold and innovative, like managing community gardens, like Salesforce, like immediately isn't just set up to do that. But there are lots of declarative tools and third-party applications that you can use without even ever doing anything like coding. And so once this application comes in, you know, we're using things like Process Builder, or we started to do some other things with Flow, where it can take that information and then start to break it up into, these are the contacts, these are the accounts, these are the gardens. This looks like they submitted an application last year, so let's mark and say that they're returning. Or I think, you know, what's the other term when they didn't submit the application last year, but they, you know, or they lapsed, I think, is that the term, Lindsay?
Yeah.
So there's a few different ways, but we're kind of using all the tools that are already built in to help configure and customize a little bit here and there Salesforce so that it matches exactly what what Keep Growing Detroit's trying to do. And that's not some like extensive overhaul. That's, you know, finding the right way to store this data so that it's easy to report, become more, as Lindsay mentioned, more accountable, having goals without spending, you know, just, you know, hours and hours and hours of like development time, because you don't need to do that on Salesforce. You have a lot of tools right away, you know, custom fields, custom objects, Process Builder, that you can do a lot. It's just really kind of identifying what is the little inefficient parts of, you know, your workflow that can be improved. And I think we, hopefully maybe next year we can get to it, but we were starting to embark on, I thought it was a very exciting idea where you would be able to use tablets to do a check-in process for seed distribution. And we were using Flow to kind of script it out and help, so a volunteer could, without a lot of knowledge, could be able to kind of go through the entire process, and that would just automatically update Salesforce without, if I recall, the story is that after seed distribution, you have to go and sit down for hours to enter in this data. And I want to, you know, I personally, just on a personal level, want to see you do better things than data entry.
I know that there's still a lot of room to grow there, but how has Salesforce helped you as far as like making data-driven decisions? You know, does the data that you collect and the information you have make it easier for you to report out to your constituents? So like what, you know, what's going well?
Yeah, so I think what's going well is Salesforce makes our data collection and reporting much easier to have staff have real-time access to that data on a monthly basis at our staff meetings when we're reporting out. We can say, oh wow, our cast was 600 gardens this month, and it's only 400, and it allows us to use that data to make decisions on a monthly basis of, oh, maybe we should do outreach different, or oh wow, like look at this huge subset of people who aren't returning. Why is that? How can we contact them? And so being able to see that data and think critically as a staff on a real-time basis about what's going on has been huge. It's saved us hundreds of hours of staff time, and then again allowed our staff to just have access to that data to make decisions as a, to share and reflect on that on a monthly basis as a staff.
How can we support you?
Yeah, so I think the first way would be, one of the biggest challenges of the pandemic has been really trying to adjust to the, technology and then being super aware of the digital divide, especially residents of Detroit. Access to internet and and technology is not an automatic, and so we really need to be continuously improving as an organization to make sure that we're using technology, but also still maintaining time and resources to just connect with people. And I think Salesforce as an efficient system to support us with that is huge in terms of our ability to continue to do that. So I think any of that technology support, and then as gardeners and farmers out there who are interested in us, I think there's so the pandemic especially has made it super apparent how our food system is broken and needs to be thought about more carefully. So thinking about where how you can support local gardeners and farmers. So if you are wherever you are in the country, like looking at how you shop and support more locally gardens and farmers. In Detroit, there's our Eastern Market where number gardens sell. There's also a ton of farmers who are doing CSAs and boxes. So you should shop locally. I think every nonprofit organization has volunteer opportunities. For us, a lot of that has had to be put on hold in terms of in person. But I think again, everybody gardens and farms, but everybody also has another skill. And so figuring out what are those other skills and how can you support your local organizations that are doing this work. And then, as gardeners and farmers, just like growing food and like supporting your neighbors and helping, continue to like give people that experience of growing their own food, which can translate into, a support for that family or that person, developing that skill, which can make them more self-sufficient. And so I think we all need to like, buckle down and really focus on, what are our skills and how do we share those at this time? And gardening and farming happens to be one of those areas where there's so much opportunity, to dig in. And as I said earlier, like it's about the gardening, but it's also about the emotional well-being of people getting outside at this point and putting their hands in the soil and connecting to earth that, is going to do us all good.
How are you funding all these seed distributions, and can people financially support Keep Growing Detroit?
Absolutely. So we're a nonprofit organization, and so we're always trying to figure out ways to do this. So first, in terms of how our programs are funded, we do have some grants, foundation grants and support that help us do our programming. But as a small nonprofit, we're always looking to diversify. So we really think about like how to have earned revenue within our programs. So with the Garden Resource Program, families pay $15, communities pay $30. And we try to make that super accessible to residents. But it also generates, $30,000 a year towards our program. So but as an organization, we really try and be cognizant of how to be a balanced organization that is not always depending on that next grant. We really look to individual donors and business donors to support our work as well. So you can go to our website and donate through. We have a PayPal donate button on our website. So we always welcome donations. We also have if you're local and you want to support the work of Keep Growing Detroit, there's also ways to purchase through. We have an online farm store, which is really clear, that's helping us to navigate sales for our Grown in Detroit growers. So you can shop local or purchase merchandise through the Grown in Detroit, or excuse me, the Grown in Detroit online farm store as well. So any support is welcome.
Thank you so much, Lindsay.
welcome.
Alexandra and I were, as we were thinking about, this conversation with you, I think we could have talked to you for half the day about gardening and everything that you're doing. And there's just so much to unpack there. I'm sure our listeners will love to learn more, and please do go to their website, keepgrowingdetroit.org. And I just want to say a heartfelt thank you to you and the whole organization for the work that you're doing. It's so important. And then for joining us today, of course, for, that your time is so valuable and that you chose to spend it with us and share this great work really means a lot to us. And of course to Eric, thank you, Eric, so much for the work that you're doing with Keep Growing Detroit. And maybe we've inspired a few listeners to join the team and help expand on some of those capabilities that we talked about today, because there really is some great power to the platform that we could help Keep Growing Detroit leverage. So, thank you for joining us today too, Eric, and for all the work that you're doing with them.
Oh, well, thank you for having me.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Can You Dig It?
Please find us on Instagram and let us know what topics you want to hear about next. Alexandra here can be found at Xandra Garden.
And Amy can be found at Master Gardener Amy.
Until next time, find your inner peace.